Stop scrolling. Seriously. If you're on Social Security or you're helping someone who is, you need to hear this right now. Because there is a rule, a very real, very enforced rule that says if you have too much money sitting in your bank account, your benefits could be reduced, suspended, or even stopped completely. And the number that triggers all of this? It might be lower than you think. We're talking about $2,000. That's it. $2,000 could put your entire monthly check at risk. And here's the thing that really gets me. Most people don't find out about this until after it's already happened, until the letter shows up in the mail, until the deposit doesn't come through, until they're sitting there wondering what went wrong. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how this rule works, who it applies to, what changed in 2026, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect yourself. Let's start from the beginning, because I want to make sure everyone watching is on the same page, whether you've been on Social Security for 20 years or you're just starting to figure all this out. So when most people hear Social Security, they think of one thing. They think of the retirement benefit, the check you get when you've worked your whole life, paid into the system, and finally hit the age where you can collect. And that's real. That exists. But here's what a lot of people don't realize. Social Security is actually an umbrella term. It covers several different programs. And the one we're talking about today, the one with the $2,000 rule, is called SSI, Supplemental Security Income, not regular Social Security retirement, not SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance, SSI. And I'll explain the difference in plain English because this distinction is the most important thing in this entire video. Regular Social Security retirement, the kind most working Americans expect to collect, is based on your work history. You work, you pay taxes, those taxes go into the Social Security system, and when you retire, you get a benefit based on how much you earned over your lifetime. That program does not have an asset limit. You can have $1 million in your savings account and still collect your full retirement benefit. There's no rule that says your bank balance is too high. That's retirement Social Security, and the $2,000 rule does not apply to it. Now, SSI is completely different. SSI is a needs-based program. That means it's designed specifically for people who are elderly, blind, or disabled, and who have very little income and very few resources. The government created SSI to be a safety net for people who truly have nothing or close to nothing. And because it's needs-based, the government puts strict limits on how much you're allowed to have. They call these limits resource limits. And right now, for a single individual, that limit is $2,000. For a married couple where both spouses receive SSI, it's $3,000. And if you go over those limits, even by $1, you lose your SSI benefit for that month. It's not gradual, it's not a slow reduction. You're either under the limit and eligible, or you're over the limit and you're not. That's how it works. Now let's take a step back for a second, because I know some of you are thinking, wait, how does the government even know how much money I have in my bank? That's a fair question. And the answer is that when you apply for SSI, you give the Social Security Administration access to verify your financial information. They can request bank statements, they can cross-reference records. And when you're already receiving SSI, you are required to report any changes in your resources. That means if you suddenly receive a large gift, an inheritance, a lump sum payment, a tax refund that pushes you over the limit, you're supposed to report it. And if you don't, and they find out later, they will ask for that money back. They call it an overpayment, and we'll talk about that in a minute because it's a big deal. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. The $2,000 limit has not changed in decades. Literally decades. The individual limit has been $2,000 since 1989. Think about that. 1989. That's 36 years ago. Everything else in the world has gotten more expensive. Rent is higher. Groceries cost more. Gas, utilities, medical bills, Everything has gone up, but that $2,000 limit has just sat there, completely frozen, while inflation has eaten away at what that money actually means in real life. Back in 1989, $2,000 was a meaningful cushion. Today, it's barely a month of basic expenses for most people. And that's exactly why so many advocates, policy experts, and lawmakers have been pushing for this to change. And in 2026, there are some important developments on that front that you need to know about. But stay with me, because I want to make sure you fully understand the current rules first, so that when I explain what's changing, it actually makes sense. So let's talk about what counts as a resource, because this is where people get tripped up, and it's more nuanced than just checking your bank balance. In the SSI world, a resource is anything you own that you could convert to cash and use for food or shelter. So yes, your bank account counts. Savings accounts, checking accounts, money market accounts, all of that counts toward your $2,000 limit. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those count too. If you have a second car, the value of that vehicle may count. If you have a piece of land you're not living on, that might count. Cash in a safe or under a mattress, that counts. Even certain life insurance policies, if they have a cash surrender value above a certain threshold, can count toward your resource limit. But here's what doesn't count, and this is important. Your primary home, the house or apartment you live in, does not count as a resource. Your primary car, the one vehicle you use for transportation, does not count. Household goods and personal belongings typically don't count. Burial funds up to a certain amount can be excluded. And there are some special savings accounts, like ABLE accounts, that also don't count toward the limit. I'll come back to ABLE accounts in a few minutes because they are one of the most powerful tools available to SSI recipients, and most people have no idea they exist. Now, let me give you a real-life example so this all clicks. Let's say there's a woman named Gloria. She's 67 years old, she lives alone, she has a disability, and she receives SSI every month. She gets around $750 a month from SSI, and that's basically her entire income. She's very careful with her money. She pays her bills, she buys groceries, she keeps things tight. Over a few months, she manages to save up a little bit. Maybe she got a birthday check from her daughter. Maybe her expenses were a little lower one month. Whatever the reason, she looks at her bank account, and there's $2,200 in there. $2,200. Here's what most people in Gloria's position don't realize. That $220 excess, that tiny overage, makes her ineligible for SSI that month. When the Social Security Administration reviews her resources, they'll see she was over the limit. Her benefit could be suspended. And if it takes a few months before it gets sorted out, she may receive payments she technically wasn't entitled to, which the SSA will then classify as an overpayment and ask her to repay. That can spiral quickly into a stressful, confusing, frightening situation for someone who is just trying to survive. And that's the tragedy of this rule. It punishes people for trying to save. It creates a trap where the harder you try to build even the tiniest financial cushion, the more risk you take on. That's not a flaw in how people manage their money. That's a flaw in the policy itself. And it's why so many people are watching this situation in 2026 very closely. So let's talk about what's happening right now in 2026, because there have been some significant conversations and legislative pushes around modernizing the SSI asset limits. This part is important. For years, there have been bipartisan efforts in Congress to update the SSI resource limits. There's legislation that has been proposed, including versions of the SSI Restoration Act, that would raise the individual limit from $2,000 to $10,000 and adjust the couple's limit as well. Some proposals would tie the limit to inflation going forward, so it automatically adjusts rather than sitting frozen for another 36 years. In 2026, these conversations have become more serious, with increased advocacy from disability rights organizations, elder care groups, and a growing number of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who recognize that the current limits are simply out of touch with modern economic reality. Now, here's what I want to be honest with you about. As of the time I'm recording this, the limits have not officially changed. The $2,000 limit is still in effect. So you cannot act as if the new rules are already in place, because they aren't, not yet. But if you have a family member on SSI, if you're an advocate, if you're a caregiver, this is something to watch very closely. Because when those limits do change, it will affect planning decisions around savings, inheritance, benefits, and more. Sign up for updates from advocacy organizations. Talk to a benefits counselor. Stay informed because this policy landscape is shifting and you want to be ready when it does. Let me take a moment now to talk about something that trips people up constantly: the overpayment situation. Because if you've ever gotten a letter from the Social Security Administration saying you were overpaid, you know how alarming that is. And if you haven't, I want you to understand what it means. An overpayment happens when the SSA determines that you received more SSI than you were entitled to. This can happen because your resources went over the limit, because your income changed and you didn't report it in time, or because of an administrative error on their end. And when it happens, the SSA sends you a letter saying you owe them money, sometimes hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands. And they will typically try to recover that money by reducing your future monthly payments until the debt is paid off. Here's what I really want you to know. You have rights in this situation. If you receive an overpayment notice, you can request a waiver, meaning you ask them to forgive the overpayment, usually by demonstrating that the overpayment wasn't your fault and that repaying it would cause financial hardship. You can also appeal the decision if you believe it's incorrect. Do not just accept an overpayment notice as final. Get help from a benefits counselor or a legal aid organization in your area. There are people whose entire job is to help SSI and SSDI recipients navigate exactly these kinds of situations, and many of them offer their services for free. Now let's talk about ABLE accounts, because I promised I'd come back to this, and it's genuinely one of the most underused tools in this entire space. An ABLE account, short for Achieving a Better Life Experience, is a special tax-advantaged savings account available to people with disabilities. And here's the part that changes everything for SSI recipients. Money saved in an ABLE account does not count toward the $2,000 SSI resource limit, at least up to a certain amount. You can have up to $100,000 in an ABLE account without it affecting your SSI eligibility. That is a dramatic difference from the $2,000 standard limit. ABLE accounts can be used to pay for a wide range of disability-related expenses: housing, transportation, medical bills, education, assistive technology, and more. They function somewhat like a regular savings account, but with that critical SSI exemption built in. Every state has its own ABLE program, and you don't have to use your own state's program. You can often enroll in another state's program online. If you or someone you love is on SSI and you're not already looking into ABLE accounts, please do that after this video. This is one of those things that can genuinely change the financial picture for a family. Let me also spend a moment on scams, because anytime there's a rule this important and this confusing, scammers show up to take advantage of people. Here's how these scams typically work. Someone gets a phone call or a text message or even a letter that looks official. It says something like, "Your Social Security benefits are at risk because of an account issue. Call this number immediately to protect your payments." And when the person calls, they're told they need to verify their information, or pay a fee to protect their account, or transfer their savings somewhere safe to avoid losing their benefits. None of this is real. The Social Security Administration will never call you and demand immediate action over the phone. They will never ask you to pay money to protect your benefits. They will never threaten arrest or legal action over a phone call. If you receive something like this, hang up. Don't engage. Don't give them any information. You can call the SSA directly at their official number, 1-800-772-1213, to verify anything you're unsure about. And please, share this with your older relatives and neighbors, because these scams specifically target elderly and disabled individuals who depend on their benefits and are understandably frightened by anything that seems to threaten those payments. So let's bring it all together now. Here's what I want you to walk away with. If you or someone you love receives SSI, not regular retirement Social Security, but SSI specifically, there is a $2,000 resource limit that is still in effect right now in 2026. This means the total countable resources you own, bank accounts, investments, cash, and other assets, cannot exceed $2,000 for an individual, or $3,000 for a couple, or you may lose your benefit for that month. Your home and one vehicle are generally not counted. Household goods and certain other items are excluded. ABLE accounts offer a powerful way to save beyond that limit without triggering a loss of benefits. You should be reporting any significant changes in your resources to the SSA promptly. If you receive an overpayment notice, you have the right to appeal and request a waiver. In 2026, there are real legislative efforts underway to raise these limits, possibly to $10,000 or more, but as of right now, those changes have not yet been signed into law. Watch this space carefully, because when it does change, you'll want to adjust your financial planning accordingly. If you're not sure whether you're close to the limit, the best thing you can do is request a benefits review. You can call the SSA, visit your local SSA office, or connect with a benefits counselor in your area. Many nonprofit organizations offer free counseling specifically for people on SSI and SSDI. Don't try to navigate this alone if you're unsure. There is help available, and using it is not a sign of weakness. It's smart planning. I want to leave you with this. The people who are most affected by these rules are some of the most vulnerable people in our society. People who are elderly, people who are disabled, people who worked their whole lives or who have never been able to work at all, and who depend on these monthly payments to survive. The $2,000 rule was never designed to punish people. It was designed for a different economic era, and it hasn't kept up. But until the law changes, you need to know the rules as they are, not as they should be. Because knowing this protects you. Don't leave money on the table. Don't let confusion cost you your benefits. Check your resource levels. Talk to a counselor if you need to. Set up an ABLE account if you qualify. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You might know a neighbor, a parent, a sibling, a friend who is on SSI and has no idea this rule exists. Sharing this could save them from a painful, stressful surprise. Stay informed, stay protected, and I'll see you in the next one.